Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. Last week we talked about the subject of public education in North Carolina. I want to ask the panelists, what do you wish you'd had a chance to say on last week's show but you didn't get around to it? Terry?
Well, we're going to have a change in our superintendent of public instruction. Mark Johnson is going to assume that role. And this gives us an opportunity to look at the office itself. And when you look at what the Constitution says, what the general statutes say about it, it is a constrained office. It's constrained by the State Board of Education and by the legislature. What it does have is a soapbox, and a big soapbox. And I think that is one of the things that Mark, of course, will take advantage of, as well as running the Department of Public Instruction. But it's important to remember that he can't unilaterally change policy. He is still subject to the General Assembly and to the State Board of Education.
But didn't the Supreme Court several years ago when Mike Easley was or was it Bev Perdue, I'm not sure which, rule that the superintendent of public instruction is essentially the chief education officer of the state?
We have no idea who's in charge of education in North Carolina, to be completely honest. We've heard so many different roles and folks assume different positions. I think it's safe to say that the State Board of Education really is the pivotal organization that really makes the policy in North Carolina, and the superintendent of public instruction only can do as much as the State Board and the General Assembly allows.
The governance issue is certainly something that needs to be straightened out. You're right about that. John Hood, what do you wish you'd have gotten around to on last week's show?
Tom, we took only a glancing blow at testing. This is going to be a flashpoint issue, I think, in 2017 and beyond. There is a significant amount of opposition to the amount of testing or the type of testing that we currently do in North Carolina's public schools, which is understandable. At the same time, unless we have a consistent set of tests in multiple subjects and multiple grades given over time, we really are not armed with the information to decide whether this program works or that school district has figured out a better way to pay teachers or this principal is doing better. So we need to have the data. A lot of times I'm frustrated by the fact that people will oppose testing because it's a top-down approach that's unfair, and they oppose parental choice of education, which is a bottom-up system. And basically, if you take away testing and you take away choice, there's no accountability for the results of schools.
All right. Chris, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
One quick thing I want to respond to, not respond, but add to what Terry said. If it looks like Roy Cooper is going to be governor as we sit here and tape this education program, the State Board of Education will change. And so that is a big, we'll have different people on the State Board of Education who will be setting education policy, whether you agree with them or not. I think that's a big change. But what I wanted to say is I think and I mentioned it in the last segment, I think it's time we look at where the money that goes to voucher schools, how much the legislature in the next 10 years is going to be spending $120, $130 million in voucher schools with no accountability. I think we're going to increasingly hear stories about crazy things kids are learning, about discriminatory practices at these schools. And at some point, with that much money, I think the public, even some people who support the idea, are going to say we need some strings, at least a few strings on this to make sure we're not wasting our money and to make sure these kids are getting a good education.
Keith Poston, you have the rare privilege of being the last voice. On your own TV show, Education Matters, you don't often get that last voice, but you do. What do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, for one thing the campaign's taught me is that North Carolinians still overwhelmingly believe in public schools and public education because every single candidate, Republicans and Democrats, ran on supporting public schools and paying teachers more. The district that I sit in was a competitive House district. Actually, it was one that the Democrats flipped. And then I sit in between two Senate districts where you had very competitive races. And all the mailers I got, and there were dozens every day.
All of them talking about it.
They all said the same thing. So in some ways, education, and the things that are actually taking up a lot of time in the legislature, no one ran on. I didn't see a single Republican candidate run on vouchers, virtual charter schools, choice, lifting the charter cap. In fact, the only candidate that really talked about things like Achievement School District was the champion for it, Rob Bryan, and he lost. And then in a state like Georgia, where they actually put something like Achievement School Districts on the ballot in a deep red state, it lost 60% to 40%, virtually an identical program that we passed here in North Carolina. So I think when the voters really look at public schools and public education, they support them, but you know they don't always know sort of what's happening
up here. The truth of the matter is this is our future that we're talking about
Absolutely.
here, educating our kids for the future and being able to make good livings and have good lives. And so I do think people care about education.
I think they care, and I think they still believe in their schools. It's kind of one of those things like with your elected officials, like you think they're all crooks, but my guy's okay. I think people still love their public school, and I think it still means something, particularly here in North Carolina.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.